order. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the Order of the House of Commons of October 23, 2025, the committee is meeting today as part of its study of Bill C-12, a bill relating to certain security measures and measures at the border. I'd like to welcome all the witnesses for this first hour from the Canadian Association of Vehicle Manufacturers, Brian Kingston, President and Chief Executive Officer, and of the Insurance Bureau of Canada, Liam McGuinty, Acting Vice President, Federal Affairs. Welcome to both of you, Mr. Kingston, Mr. McGuinty, and let's start with Mr. Kingston. You have 5 minutes for your remarks, please.
Thank you, Chair, committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in your study of Bill C-12. 1 year ago, the CVMA, Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association, appeared before this committee to raise our concerns about the rise of car theft in Canada. Despite stronger regulatory requirements for Canadian vehicles in the form of mandatory engine immobilizers and the fitment of the same technologies in new vehicles in both Canada and the U.S., Canada's vehicle theft rate was growing significantly faster than that of the United States. Since then, manufacturers have continued to improve deterrence and security systems to stop vehicle theft. The industry has also been actively working with stakeholders, including federal, provincial, and municipal governments, insurance, and law enforcement, to better understand challenges and find solutions to deter vehicle theft. But these efforts alone cannot stop theft. Sophisticated transnational organized crime groups have targeted Canada, where the perceived risk of prosecution was low and the financial reward was high. To address this situation, we called for a comprehensive plan to target organized crime groups and close the export market for stolen vehicles. Bill C-12 takes meaningful and necessary steps to target organized crime groups and secure our borders. These include strengthening Canada's anti-money laundering and anti-terrorist financing regime, including through stronger anti-money laundering penalties, amendments to the Customs Act, obligating owners and operators at ports of entry to provide, equip, and maintain facilities for any purpose related to the administration and enforcement of the CBSA mandate, and allowing the CBSA to access premises under the control of transporters and warehouse operators to perform examinations in places where goods destined for export are reported, loaded, unloaded, or stored. These measures, combined with the Government of Canada's border plan and Bill C-2, will make it more challenging to operate vehicle theft rings in Canada that primarily export vehicles to foreign markets. The evidence is clear. More resources to secure our border and target organized crime have already reduced theft rates in Canada. The increase in the number of stolen vehicles has been reversed. 16,000 fewer vehicles were stolen in 2024 compared to 2023. That's a 14% decrease. And through the first half of this year, auto theft rates have decreased by 19.1% compared to the same period in 2024. To maintain and build on that success, increased border resources must be maintained. And there is more that can be done to address new forms of theft. In response to enhanced vehicle security systems and police resources that are targeting theft, organized crime groups have now increasingly focused on auto financing fraud. Organized crime groups are the root of the vehicle theft problem in Canada. Theft will persist as long as these groups find ways to profit from stealing vehicles while minimizing their risk of prosecution. We applaud the actions taken by the federal government. We remain committed to working with all levels of government, insurance, law enforcement, and continue to reduce vehicle theft here in Canada. Thank you very much and look forward to your questions.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Kingston.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kingston. This will allow me to give the floor to Mr. McGuinty for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much and good morning. I'm pleased to be here today on behalf of the Insurance Bureau of Canada. We represent the vast majority of Canada's home, car, and business insurance companies. My remarks today will address the persistent challenge of auto theft in Canada, emphasize the urgent need for sustained federal leadership to tackle the issue, and highlight the role C12 can play in that effort. Auto theft reached crisis levels in Canada a few short years ago. In 2023, the number of stolen vehicles surged to 115,000, a 46% increase over just a 10-year span. In the lead up to the crisis, our industry had been sounding the alarm and has since worked closely with governments, law enforcement, stakeholders, and consumers to raise awareness of auto theft. Our interest in the issue is clear. Auto theft drives up insurance costs and premiums for all of us. More critically, it undermines public safety. Beyond its immediate impact on driver safety, auto theft serves as a major funding source for organized crime. Because of the data we hold, our industry serves as a barometer on auto theft. So let's start with the good news. Auto theft rates are dropping. According to Statistics Canada, in 2024, theft rates fell by 14% compared to the previous year. Our data shows these decreases are largely driven by fewer thefts in Ontario and Quebec. We credit this improvement to coordinated efforts by all levels of government and law enforcement. Insurance companies have also played a role through incentives and pricing signals that help consumers make informed choices about the vehicles they drive and how to protect them. Now, here's the bad news. Despite the recent decreases, theft rates are 25% higher than they were 10 years ago. Last year, just under 100,000 vehicles were reported stolen. Organized crime continues to drive a significant amount of auto theft in Canada. In many instances, they're targeting newer, high-value models, often luxury SUVs and trucks, then exporting them overseas for close to full market value. In other bad news, the impact of auto theft on insurance premiums has increased. The cost of insurance claims for theft are up nearly 400% since 10 years ago. Thankfully, we've begun to collectively recognize the need to disrupt the stolen vehicle market. CBSA and law enforcement have made good progress intercepting stolen vehicles before they leave the country. Provincial governments and the CCMTA have begun cleaning up vehicle registry systems and sharing data, making it harder to fraudulently re-VIN vehicles. And the federal government has invested in the CBSA's capacity and proposed tougher bail and sentencing laws for violent offenders. C12 is the latest encouraging development. As this committee knows, the bill would obligate owners and operators at ports of entry and exit to provide, equip, and maintain facilities to allow for the examination and detention of goods destined for export. It would also allow the CBSA access to premises under the control of transporters and warehouse operators to perform examinations in places where goods destined for export are stored. The bill recognizes the strategic importance of our ports of exit as critical choke points, key points where we can intercept and prevent stolen goods, including stolen vehicles, from leaving the country. Initiatives like C12 are welcome and demonstrate the federal government's commitment to continuing the fight against auto theft. But here's our concern. The data makes it clear. We're still in the thick of this fight. We can't afford to take our foot off the gas, which is why we've been calling for all elements of the National Action Plan on Combating Auto Theft to be adopted. That includes changes to Canada's motor vehicle safety standards that would ensure that vehicle security becomes a mandatory safety feature. In the near term, C12, along with any other effort to boost our enforcement capacity and disrupt the stolen vehicle market, are welcomed by our industry. Thank you for the invitation to speak with you today. I look forward to your questions.
Merci, Monsieur McGuinty.
Thank you, Mr. McGuinty, for your remarks. This leads us to Mr. Lloyd, having 6 minutes, please.
We've heard from the CBSA that they're seeing a shift of stolen vehicles from the East Coast now moving more to the West Coast. Is that something that your organizations are observing?
Happy to start. Yeah, what we track is insurance theft claims at IBC most closely, and I think the general trend that you've seen is a decrease in the value and volume of thefts in central Canada, so Ontario and Quebec. That's decreased, and happy to give some thought, have some discussion on why that might be. And then a bit of a whack-a-mole in the rest of Canada. So you've seen it decrease. You've seen it either even out in Western Canada, and you've seen some parts of Western Canada increase, some parts of Atlantic Canada increase, but it's not been an even experience.
There was a recent Carfax report in September that said that it claims there's 372,000 vehicles in Canada that have fraudulent or cloned vehicle identification numbers. This is deeply concerning. What are the concerns of the Insurance Bureau and your organization on these cloned VINs? What would be the impact?
And it is a growing issue. There's a bit of context. There's three typical destinations for stolen vehicles, or three things that happen. They get exported to international markets, they get fraudulently revinned and then sold to unsuspecting customers, or they get taken apart and sold in chop shops. Revinning is a growing concern. It's a growing concern across Canada. Oftentimes what happens is a consumer unaware will purchase a vehicle they think has a clean bill of sale. It does not, and then there are often consequences for that consumer. One of the things we found encouraging is provincial governments, including the Ontario government and the CCMTA, have started to clean up their VIN systems. They've started to share data more, and that's an encouraging development, because the more we can share data, the more we can root out the kinds of fraudulent data that we've seen in the system in the past.
What will be the impact, like we're talking about over 300,000 cloned VINs, when people discover, what happens to consumers when they discover that their vehicle is a cloned VIN that was fraudulently a stolen vehicle before they purchased it? What's the impact on consumers?
There are implications, and the consumer ultimately has accountability for the car that they drive. Law enforcement will be better equipped to speak to the specific consequences, but there absolutely is an onus on the consumer to know what they're purchasing. Oftentimes, though, they're doing it with a hand tied behind their back because the information coming to them appears to be legitimate.
Are the insurance companies going to come and claim those vehicles back? Because don't they belong to the insurance companies?
I'd have to come back to you on that. No, that's not something that I've
I mean, if an insurance company has paid out a claim to somebody who had a stolen vehicle, and there's a consumer who bought that stolen vehicle, who ultimately owns that vehicle? Is it the consumer who purchased it, or is it the insurance company that paid out the claim?
It's a good question. There could be subrogation involved ultimately if it came to that point. I don't know enough about that subject. I have to come back to you on that.
Do you have any comments on that, sir? Okay. Equite Association has labeled Alberta as a feeder province. Alberta now has the highest per capita rate of vehicle theft. It's clear that organized crime is engaged in revinning. Now, I've been told by people, like some people have said, maybe we need a national vehicle registry, but I've already been told that we have an intra-provincial record sharing system. It's just not being used. Can you give us some more information on that?
So there's something called the Interprovincial Record Exchange. It's managed by the CCMTA. I think you are actually seeing provincial governments step up and use the IRE more. It was one of the recommendations in the National Action Plan on Combating Auto Theft. I'm encouraged by what I've seen, which is a real focus on improving the data. The problem with a national VIN registry or an IRE is it's garbage data in, garbage data out.
Un appel au règlement de la part du député.
Yes, MP Ramsey?
EA and things like this, please.
Okay, so let's try to hear what the CCMTA stands for, and the interpreters might also.
I'm going to be challenged
that.
to know that actually know what it stands for, but I believe it's the Canadian Council of Motor Transport Administrators, and the IRE is the Interprovincial Record Exchange.
There's a concern that's been raised to me that, some consumers, I mean, a vehicle purchase is sometimes people's largest purchase next to their home. If people discover that their vehicles are not legally theirs, some desperate people might do fraudulent things, like say that their vehicle got stolen. Is that a concern that the Insurance Bureau has, that as products like Carfax's report that has just come out about these cloned VINs come out, that we could see a rise in increased auto theft, auto fraud in relation to these stolen vehicles? And what is the Insurance Bureau recommending to combat that?
It's possible that could be a result, and you are seeing an increase in auto fraud across Canada. And I think as, frankly, you've seen a decrease in auto theft, the same kinds of criminals who committed are looking for other opportunities to make a buck. And so ultimately, the consumer needs to be, to undertake full due diligence. There are services available through provincial governments, no matter where you are in Canada, that allow you to verify the VIN. There are also private services, and you've referenced one of them, that allow you to do that. Our job, along with Equité Association, which is funded by the insurance industry, its mandate is to combat auto insurance crime, is to share information about what you can do to protect yourself from auto theft, from fraud. I think there's more work to do there, but we're encouraged by what we've seen certainly on the auto theft component in the last year or so.
Now, I noted that you said that there has been a decline in the number of vehicles reported stolen, but has the insurance industry seen a reduction in the financial losses from stolen vehicles? Has that gone down as well?
Marginally. We reached a 1.5 billion in auto insurance theft claims in 2023. It's gone down to something like 1.3 billion. But over at...
You said that auto thefts have gone down significantly in the last 2 years. Why haven't the financial claims gone down?
The value has gone way, way up. Over the last 10 years, the value of auto theft claims is 400% higher. It's
So the number of vehicles have gone down, but the cost of the claims has not gone down. It's gone up proportionally per vehicle.
Well, to be clear, over the last couple of years, you've seen a decrease in both the value and the volume. But over the long run, the value of auto theft claims is significantly up. It's 400% up over the last 10 years. The reality is that cars being stolen are much more expensive now than they were previously. This isn't folks stealing, cars for joyrides. This is targeting luxury SUVs and trucks because of the value they hold in the market.
Now, when luxury vehicles are stolen, does that increase the premiums of poor people's vehicles?
I apologize for interrupting you abruptly, but we need to move on to MP Dandurand for 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Et,
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to both of you for being here with us today to talk to us about the scourge, which is auto theft. I understand that there are measures to improve the situation and that they have been put in place over the past year. That's excellent news. Mr. Kingston, we did talk about record sharing. What kind of data and records do vehicle manufacturers hold that could be shared with governments and police forces to reduce the extent of the scourge? And would Bill C-12 cover that kind of record sharing that you are talking about that could be used to reduce vehicle thefts?
So there is a lot of record sharing that occurs between auto manufacturers and local police forces. And there's a lot of activity that occurs where they try and coordinate on vehicle safety systems and ultimately targeting some of these groups. That said, it is done in a very regional basis, and that was one of the challenges, is that we found that manufacturers may be working with one local police force that was deeply involved in this, but there wasn't necessarily sharing then occurring at the national level, for example. C-12 doesn't necessarily address that. However, the situation has improved dramatically because this became such a pressing issue for all involved, and so we are seeing better information sharing between municipal, provincial and federal governments, but there's always more to do, and the VINing question is a great example of that. We didn't have a coordinated approach on VINing, and different provinces had different approaches to it. It's getting better. It's not perfect, but it's getting better.
vous détailler davantage le genre d'informations que vous détenez? On sait que nos
Could you give us more information on the kind of records and information you have? We know that there are increasing numbers of security measures, and what in the best data and record sharing cases, what kind of information is shared?
Case by case, because what you'll see a manufacturer doing if they're coordinating with a local law enforcement agency is they're trying to find out how was a vehicle security system overcome, what was used to do it, and then what could possibly be done to avoid that in the future. But it very much is case by case, and these crime groups are very sophisticated. They're using different methods all the time. But there is a benefit to sharing some of that information amongst law enforcement agencies so that they can understand what to look for, and of course sharing it with auto manufacturers so they can figure out what happened and why was the vehicle stolen in the first place.
Vous diriez qu'il y a de la collaboration?
Would you see that there's cooperation between various auto manufacturers to share information on thefts, on the techniques that are used for stealing vehicles so that they can share more information on vehicle safety?
It does occur. We don't have a formal structure for that type of information sharing, although the industry is regularly engaged with Transport Canada, who is responsible for the regulations regarding vehicle immobilizer systems, for example. So there are venues for this type of information to be exchanged, but I think there's probably room for improvement just to make sure that everybody is responding to the most up-to-date information and the most up-to-date techniques that these groups are using.
Merci. Je vous invite à...
Thank you. I encourage you to formalize those discussions. It would just be beneficial for everyone. Mr. McGuinty, very quickly. I come from a region, well, a regional area, not one of the big urban centers. From your perspective in terms of data, is there a difference in auto thefts in urban, peri-urban, or rural regions?
This has been a problem that has mostly targeted our larger cities. Frankly, Montreal and the GTA have been hotspots for auto theft, and in part that's because of the proximity to the Port of Montreal. You still see significant rates of theft in our urban centers, but it's not to say there isn't theft that happens in our rural centers as well.
Et est-ce que la destination ultime...
And the ultimate destination of these stolen vehicles is the same for vehicles stolen in rural areas? Are they the same as the ones stolen in urban areas? Maybe in rural areas, those vehicles are sold throughout Canada?
For law enforcement, but what I can say, from what we've heard is Ontario and Quebec, which is where the brunt of the auto theft crisis has been for the last several years, a lot of those cars are destined for export, and a lot of them are making their way up the 401. If you're in Ontario, towards the Port of Montreal, not always, but that has been certainly a commonality between the thefts that we've seen in central Canada.
De votre côté, est-ce qu'il y a aussi de l'échange d'informations?
And on the other hand, is there data and record sharing to reduce that scourge? And is there anything, would C12 provide more?
Members have offered anonymized VINs to car manufacturers, in case it was useful in forming product design. And that's something we've done. We've incurred that cost as an industry in the spirit of making sure that we can help, create cars that are less likely to be stolen.
Monsieur Kingston, est-ce qu'il y a une façon...
Mr. Kingston, we know that there is trafficking of VIN trafficking, actually. Is there a way to manufacture them so that thieves cannot traffic these VINs?
Not necessarily. You would be amazed by how much time, energy, and resources these groups put into overcoming systems. So, of course, companies have tried to make it more challenging for a VIN to be removed or replaced on a vehicle, but there have been situations where a vehicle was recovered and law enforcement found that this organized crime operation had a full VIN manufacturing facility where they were replacing the VIN with a highly convincing new VIN. So, of course, you have to always try and stay one step ahead, but I wouldn't underestimate the money and resources that these groups put into replacing VINs.
Merci, Madame la députée Dangerin.
Thank you, Ms. Dangerin. And now, Mr. Bellefeuille, you have 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if you need your earpiece. Yeah, you're fine? Okay. During an appearance, during a meeting on the same topic, we heard that the border was porous and that the CBSA and law enforcement had to do their jobs better. The idea here is that we estimate that there are 2 to 3 CBSA agents or officers missing to be able to guarantee proper security at the border. If we saw improvements in that, and in auto theft, it's partly because the RCMP and the CBSA have prioritized this problem that received a lot of media attention. What we often wonder is when they are focusing more on auto theft, what else is being left behind in organized crime? Are there any other services that need more of the CBSA's attention? C12 could, in the meantime, improve things, but I don't get the impression that we really have the means to implement everything we want. That is to have ongoing funding for resources to have an impact at present and in the long term on auto theft. Everything is based on the CBSA's ability to provide this inspection service. The Port of Montreal is telling us that there are containers that can take up to 2 weeks to open up, and that there is really an impact on builders and manufacturers who can't send vehicles on to their clients because there aren't enough CBSA officers that can't work any faster than they can. Do you believe that C12 in parts 2 or 3 will really be able to change and reduce, have a dissuasive effect on auto theft? Mr. Kingston and then Mr. McGuinty?
Yeah, a step in the right direction, and combined with all of the funding that was put into CBSA under the border plan, plus some of the changes in C2, these are making a difference, and we're seeing it in the data. But your point is absolutely correct. As the Border Service puts more energy and resources into vehicle theft, there is a risk that other types of illegal activity moving through the ports may see an increase. So be it drugs or guns or other sorts of illegal activity. That said, it was clear that we did not have the resources necessary. The inspections were not occurring on outbound cargo. And now, because government has put funding into this, there will be much stronger deterrence into that type of activity occurring at ports of entry. So it's a step in the right direction, but there's always more that can be done.
Mr. McGuinty.
I agree with Brian. Maybe I'll add 2 things. One, I think for a very long time and for sound public policy reasons, we had a focus on what was coming into the country as opposed to the outflows. And I think we've realized, especially under the tie to organized crime, that a focus on outflows was also in our public interest. I would say this bill and other measures by the government, including the increases to CBSA capacity, are important. So too is the technology held by the CBSA, and I know there's been pilots for new scanners and investments in more scanners. I think all that will come together and continue to make an improvement in terms of, as I mentioned in my remarks, squeezing that choke point, which is the final choke point really in a very long auto theft supply chain.
Une question peut-être, Monsieur le Président, on va...
Complex question, perhaps, Mr. Chair. Mr. Kingston may find it a bit interesting, but I didn't take part in the study on auto theft. But how is it that cars are so easy to steal? How come Transport Canada doesn't have higher standards to ensure that you have to talk to each other and to neutralize these techniques? I know that technology evolves rapidly, but it seems like you would be fairly simple to steal a car in Canada. I mean, in countries that are similar to ours, is that scourge that they're seeing also? And why is it so easy?
Yeah, well, what we saw, and this is what caused us to raise the alarm when we were last here, we have the same vehicles in Canada largely as what you would see on U.S. roads, but we actually have an immobilizer standard in Canada, which you don't have in the United States. So every vehicle comes with fitted with an immobilizer, and yet theft rates here were far, far higher. So that led us to investigate, well, why is that happening? And it turns out it's because they could be easily exported at a market, harder to do in the United States. To your question around the technology, companies are constantly evolving, but the amount of money that gets put into this from organized crime groups means that you put in a new security system. In some instances, within days, those vehicles are being stolen by these groups, torn down so they can find vulnerabilities, and then that information is shared. So it is almost impossible to come up with a single solution that will make a car unstealable. And if you did do that, let's say Transport Canada mandated that every vehicle's got bars on the window. You can't get into it. There's no way possibly without some sort of heavy machinery. Well, what we saw happening here as the systems improved, organized crime groups turned to carjackings, violent home invasions. They will do whatever it takes to get the keys, and that's obviously a very dangerous outcome for Canadians. So there is no silver bullet on the technology side. It's a suite of measures, including closing off export market, more law enforcement, higher penalties for criminals, but there is no single technological solution that will stop the theft.
Kingston, ce qui me met de la passe.
Thank you. And now the floor goes to MP Gill for 5 minutes.
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming and being witnesses today. I want to start off by asking you a fairly simple question, but getting into it, Canada's auto sector has been coming to a breaking point now for quite a while. After theft is exploding and is costing Canadians $1 billion a year in insurance claims, draining households and budgets, and it's hammering the manufacturers already struggling to stay competitive currently. And instead of easing the pressure, the federal government is continuing to pile on currently. After spending years championing the electrical vehicle mandate, Mark Carney has finally admitted that the policy is unworkable. But rather than scrapping it, he simply pushed it back to 2026 and launched another bloated bureaucracy review. So the question is very simple. How do you think that the increased theft rates affected the total cost structure for automakers, insurances, consumers, and how this could relate to theft-related losses reduced to the capital manufacturers that have been met for possible EV mandate compliance requirements?
Yeah, well, the automotive industry is under unprecedented pressure, as you've outlined. Some of that is emanating out of protectionist policies in the United States. But there are also a number of Canadian policies that have put huge costs on this industry at the worst possible time. The federal EV mandate, we estimate that it will cost Canadian manufacturers over $3 billion in compliance credits. It must be repealed. We have to take a look at every single element of Canada's competitiveness. If we're going to protect the automotive footprint, we should be evaluating all of these rules and regulations and determining, are they effective and what is the cost? And if it's clear that they're redundant and ineffective, like the EV mandate, get rid of it. Let manufacturers focus on what they do best, which is building cars here and employing Canadians. And don't put these unnecessary regulations on top of them at a time like this.
So do you agree that the EV mandate should be scrapped?
Oh, absolutely. We've been saying that for the better part of 5 years.
Right. So how do you think that companies will weigh EV mandates penalties, rising vehicle theft expenses, and cross-border traffic tariff rises when determining whether to invest in new Canadian facilities or shift productions to other jurisdictions?
All of this is factored in when a company makes an investment decision. They evaluate a location on the cost of manufacturing in that location, and then there are a number of other factors that go into it. So if you have an EV mandate that will require companies to sell less internal combustion engine vehicles and purchase credits from foreign automakers to operate here, that makes Canada significantly less attractive.
Okay. So if auto theft costs continue to elevate and insurance premiums continue to go up, how might this affect consumers' willingness or ability to purchase higher-priced EVs?
It will make it a challenge for sure. Canadians are in an affordability crisis right now, and if they are forced to purchase EVs, which is what the EV mandate does, and this is according to Environment Canada, it's going to raise vehicle prices, reduce availability, and ultimately impact low-income rural and northern Canadians disproportionately.
So that would be a struggle because the federal government has put a mandate to set a target there then?
Exactly. Directly related to the federal mandate.
Perfect. Okay, yeah. So that's what we've been saying the whole time. And then given these soaring costs of theft and rising insurance premiums and the financial strain already crushing manufacturers, isn't it fair to ask whether that the EV mandate is actively making Canada less secure by forcing money and attention away from combating real threats towards unworkable strategies from the government that's put forward?
Yes, it absolutely is.
Would you like to go further into detail with that, Mr. McCourt?
Just on the insurance question, if you boil it down to cost per consumer, at one point in Ontario, $130 of your premium was going towards auto theft costs. Ontario has been a hotspot. Just in the last 8 years, in the GTA, theft claims have increased in value by 700%, far outpacing inflation and other factors that would contribute to an insurance premium.
Okay. How much time do I have left?
30 seconds.
30 seconds? Okay, well, that's all the questions I have for now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, MP Gill. I'll turn to MP Sassi for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for our witnesses for doing a great job and providing us with a lot of information. So, Mr. McGuinty, I think you actually mentioned the fact that most of these cars are coming from Toronto and Montreal and finding their way through the Port of Montreal. And you mentioned specifically the 401. As you know, there's many cameras on the 401. I suspect that they are primarily for speeding purposes. But do you think there's any benefit to using that technology for the purposes of doing a better job detecting where these cars are coming from and cracking down on organized crime?
Thank you for the question, and I think there's merit to it, certainly. Part of the challenge is because of the volume and the number of cars that are being stolen, and also sometimes you don't realize that a car has been stolen and it doesn't get reported until sometime after. There are challenges with intercepting a car on the way from, let's say, your driveway to the final port of exit, which is why this bill and other efforts by the government to focus on that choke point are important. But it is typically a circuitous journey, from your driveway to a cooling off parking lot to perhaps another cooling off parking lot and then up the road, et cetera, et cetera. So there could be opportunities for law enforcement to intercept. I think you've seen a really strong focus by law enforcement in central Canada and elsewhere, new investments and a keen focus on stopping auto theft. And one of the reasons is because they know it is a primary funder of organized crime in this country.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Mr. McGuinty. Next, if I could go to Mr. Kingston. First of all, thank you for the nice things you said about this bill. It obviously will help in our endeavor to crack down on stolen cars. But you also said that we should be using every tool available. Now, I wanted to ask the same question insofar as technology is concerned. As you know, the Premier of Ontario has said that he will not be using these cameras for speeding purposes anymore. So do you think they can be put to good use to assist our law enforcement authorities to crack down on car theft?
I would have to defer to law enforcement partners. They are best placed to answer what the tools are that they're missing to interdict and effectively intercept these vehicles before they make it to export market. We have seen an improvement in recovery rates. It's up 3% this year, but more to go. But yeah, I hesitate from giving you a definitive on that simply because I'm not in law enforcement.
Okay. So the follow-up question I had is, yes, I appreciate full well, as you've explained to us, that there is no perfect solution to this. But I'll start off with Mr. Kingston. Would you agree that auto manufacturers also have to bear some responsibility, and there are certain things they can do to make it more difficult for cars to be stolen?
Oh, absolutely. This requires numerous actors and players in this ecosystem coordinating and working together to address this. And the manufacturer role is working with law enforcement and improving their vehicle security systems, which they're doing constantly.
Thank you for that. Mr. McGuinty, is there more that auto manufacturers can do?
I think, we've called for a whole-of-society approach to tackle this. There's certainly a role for automakers, and there's a role for government, too. One of the major outstanding items of the National Action Plan on Combating Auto Theft is the finalization of an update to the CMV, the Canadian Motor Vehicle Safety Standard. And we've input into that process, so have a number of OEMs. We haven't updated the standard since 2005. We think it's time. I think Transport Canada, sees the same. To update that standard. Technology has changed significantly since then, and we think a standard should reflect that. And one of the ways to ensure a dynamic standard is you make it ambulatory in nature. You have it evolve along with trends.
Well, thank you very much. That concludes my questions.
Thank you. MPSAC, 2 minutes et demie pour Madame de Bellefeuille.
2.5 minutes for Ms. de Bellefeuille. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Kingston, you stated in your opening remarks that it was a good thing that manufacturers must now ensure that there's room for CBAC officers so that they can do their job. Could you explain concretely what that could change in auto thefts? For example, if there's been some kind of a new port facility for that.
Encountered when we started to dig into this and look more at what was happening at the Port of Montreal specifically, we realized that it's actually a constrained space and that CBSA didn't have the facilities to both inspect outbound cargo at the rate that was necessary and pull, you think about a port of that size and scale, taking a container off a ship, bringing it somewhere where you can safely open and inspect. It actually takes quite a bit, just from a physical space perspective, to do that and do that effectively. So I think the bill is a step in the right direction because it requires that a port operator creates that space for CBSA. But there probably will still be some physical constraints at ports in Canada. But we cannot allow outbound cargo to leave Canada uninspected. That was what was happening, and that was what was causing this problem.
C'est quand même.
Yeah, that's many costs incurred for ports and also shipping companies, to broaden their space and have technological tools available. Do you believe it's up to providers to assume all those costs, or the operators, or should the cost be shared between operators and governments?
Yeah, I think, everybody has a role to play in it. I think government, CBSA has to have the space to operate and to do their job. And I would argue, frankly, if we don't address this, the cost will be borne by all Canadians in the form of higher theft rates, higher insurance costs, but ultimately more government taxpayer money going into addressing these crime issues. So while there may be an upfront cost of putting in place these facilities, the long-term payoff far outweighs that cost.
Merci, Madame la députée.
Thank you, Ms. de Bellefeuille. And MP Kirkland for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. In one portion of it, you mentioned 25% higher. I believe it was Mr. McGuinty that we're 25% higher than 10 years ago. Government, you said it was good news that the government potentially has introduced some tougher bail and sentencing that will deter. Would you say then the light type of bail and sentencing we had over the last 10 years has increased auto theft over that period of time then?
I'll make a more general comment because IBC is not an expert in criminal code or
I bring it up just because you said it in your testimony.
I did. And I think for too long, auto theft was a very low risk, high reward proposition. And there's a lot that went into that. One, it was easy to steal the car, some models more than others. Two, there was a lack of a focus on outbound exports. We started to remedy that. And I do think you've heard a number of voices, including from law enforcement, speak to the fact that sentencing was not strong enough. We've supported, Bill C-26. We've supported other measures that the government's introduced. We think it's appropriate to be more severe in terms of especially violent auto thefts.
Okay, and I would like to just pick up on something Mr. Lloyd, he was asking at the end of his questioning. So if more luxury cars are being stolen now, which is what we're seeing because the cost hasn't really gone down in terms of insurance, is that cost then being borne by average and low income Canadians as well then in their insurance costs?
Everyone ultimately pays for higher auto theft costs and claims. Now, if you're driving a high-risk vehicle or a vehicle model that's more likely to be stolen, you're going to bear much more of that risk. And in fact, in some provinces, you've seen specific surcharges get levied on high-risk vehicle models. But ultimately, insurance is a risk pool, and so all of us pay more for risk, higher risk.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kingston, if you were to single out just the largest barrier, just one, to stopping stolen vehicles from leaving Canada, what would be the largest barrier to stopping them from leaving Canada?
Well, the biggest barrier was a lack of outbound cargo inspection. Yeah.
And would you say that the absence of mandatory container screening at ports is still that, so it's still that largest one? And do you feel C-12 addresses that enough?
Yes, it does. Now, CBSA is better placed to answer this. You don't need to inspect every single piece of cargo leaving the country. I mean, they use metrics to figure out what's high risk, but they need to have the space, they need to have the equipment, and they need to have the officers to intervene when they've determined that something is potentially carrying stolen goods.